second amendment.
As I mentioned, my parents own the fifth largest gun store in Texas, so I am all for the Second Amendment. And I think what Governor Stamberger is doing is just unacceptable. We have the right to protect ourselves, and I'm going to preserve that right. That is just unfair what she's doing, trying to take away our gun rights. And yet, they are allowed. The state Senate is allowed to carry guns, but we're not. No, not under.
Maybe a little once.
Anyway, so I will be protecting every aspect of the Second Amendment.
The second question from state is how we can make sure ICE.
I fully support ICE. I fully support legal immigration, but what I do not support is illegal immigration. It is not fair to especially illegal immigrants to come to this country. And being that ICE is a part of law, support ICE. And they are doing their jobs. And we need to let them do their jobs. We need to protect them to allow them to do their job.
This is honest.
Honest.
Right. Being at the federal level, federal laws supersede state. And so, yes, I'm protecting ICE and I will require her to support the federal laws, just like our ICE employees. They're doing their job to carry out the federal laws.
Right. Yep.
2A all the way.
We're going to need a bumper sticker for that.
Hat shirts.
Hat shirts.
I do have a new merchandise page if do a little commercial break. I had so many people asking me on my road trips if I sell merchandise, and I didn't. So just Friday, we got my merchandise page up. So if you're interested, let me know.
Those little.
Yes, I sell those as well. Yes. Because I've already done that shit. I actually have already signed a 2-term limit pledge. I will only serve 2 terms. And in addition to that question, I'll caveat that when it comes to experience, as you know, Mark Warner said he'd stick to a 2-term limit pledge. He has not 3 years of federal experience. He has 17, so I actually have almost double the amount of federal experience than Mark Warner does.
The things from the white gambling, you only run on 2 terms, 1 term out of it there. It's the way the Senate and the House of Representatives is situated, and the aspect that you're not going to get on a good committee unless you've been there 12 years. How are you going to push your way in and be able to say, I don't care you've been here 10 years, I'm on this committee?
My plan is to go in there and say, I have the expertise to be on the budget and the finance committee, on the appropriations committee. I used to write when I was working at the White House. I helped develop the appropriation language in the president's budgets, 5 years of the president's budgets. So I have direct experience that I've already done that. And because I'm a CPA, and because I helped put together the president's budgets and also make sure that the U.S. government's financial reports were accurate and help create that with the Department of Treasury. That's how I'm going to get on those committees, even though I am a junior, because I've got the expertise that they don't have and they will want me on those committees.
Listen, I'm not sure what this means. When you make this square, I'm tired of living under the northern Indiana rule. Go.
Right.
And if you get rid of those, get rid of the square.
I concur. I mean, it's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
DC's supposed to be square, so let's make it whole and square. Yeah, that's it.
Well, Kim, one of the biggest differences between Northern Virginia, well, there's a lot, but 31% of the people in Fairfax County were not born in the continental United States. Now, this is not, I'm just trying to say, to be from Virginia, you're talking about what's good for Virginia. If you're hostile to the state that you're living in, how do we make progress?
Well, I really appreciate that question because that's what I dealt with when I worked for the White House. How do I get a lot of the Democrats, Independents, and Republicans to work together to create a policy that was needed for just good government, saving taxpayer dollars. And I learned firsthand how to do that. And that's what I plan to do as the U.S. Senate. In the U.S. Senate is to exactly work collaboratively with both parties to make that happen. Because it's not good common sense government who doesn't want to save taxpayer and it's up to them to raise the taxes, showing us just the opposite. But I've got that experience. Actually, that's how I'm getting a lot of Democrat votes up in Northern Virginia. Is I have people that would actually have to implement my policy or work with me to create that policy. And so a lot of the Democrats up there know how I operate, how I get results, and they're excited to actually vote for me because they're like, it's time for change. When I ask, what has Warner done for you? Only 3 people of the 100,000 people that I've talked to have actually said Mark Warner's done something for them. Like show up for her son's Eagle Scout graduation. I expect a little more from my senators, and I'm going to carry out and work for you. Another example to what has Mark Warner done for you? As a small business owner, I and other Virginia small businesses marched on the Hill with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We had scheduled meetings with Mark Warner. It was pouring down rain that day. We didn't expect it to pour down rain, so nobody got umbrellas. But yet we made it to that building and went to eat with Mark Warner, and he wasn't there. Neither was his staff. We wasted our time. And that was actually the cherry on top. After seeing everything I saw in the executive branch and federal government and what the fix, I said, this is a cherry on top. If not Warner nor his staff are here, what make up the backbone of Virginia? If he's not going to be here for them, I love you. And that was the day that I started strategizing on retiring and running for U.S. Senate.
Very interesting your comments on you made the statement that the federal laws supersede and that they can be forced upon the states. If that's true, why are we living with New Jersey and New York and Michigan and Illinois and Colorado and California and Minnesota? Why are we living with those governors and mayors superseding federal?
They're trying to supersede.
They are superseding.
And
they're not trying, they are.
And that's what's so sad about the people that voted them into office. That's why we're having that conflict, in my opinion, is they know that federal law supersedes state law. And yet they're trying to tell and get the people to get out and fight against ICE. And that is just unlawful.
And they're being successful.
The other thing I don't like about that is how many of those people who come to protest actually live there. Very small percentage. That's right. Most of these people are coming in from other states to protest. And they need to do it too.
So what is stopping the federal government from stepping in, superseding, and enforcing the federal law? What is stopping that right now?
I think a good example is, but it's taking more time outside D.C., is what President Trump did in Washington, D.C. It was one of the highest highest crime rate areas, and we went in and we cleaned it up. And ICE is trying to do the same thing. In my opinion, they just don't have President Trump right there on the to do that. But I think that what President Trump is doing in sending ICE out there and supporting ICE to do their job, he's doing a good job. It's just not as quick because but DC was a good example of a model.
I agree that DC was a good example. I just don't see that same model being successful anywhere else. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's because Trump's on the ground there. I'm not but I have to rely on the experts, and President Trump
He's a successful leader. And he picked his cabinet to do their job. And what I find is the news media is very, very biased. I mean, they're using data. I've been, as I mentioned, in federal government. I know that there is data they're relying on and to make these decisions. And so I support Maha in whatever Maha's decision. Yeah, it's a work in progress, and we just have to use the data to get the buy-in to make the change that needs to be changed. But you're on.
Up to there's a place in town called Open Door that kids and people. Anyhow, we went up one night to bag shoes. Cool kids. And in the bag, we put a local cereal, Raymond noodles, I think it's a granola bar of some sort like that. A drink, a little Gatorade drink. Those things. But nothing really to the test, but yet to the history teachers that picked out the need was else history do it all. But it wasn't nutritious meal for anyone. I mean, just that this is what the people say.
That's sad, and I agree. If we're going to use federal dollars, we shouldn't be putting the sweet drinks that that aren't nutritious.
It's just gonna take time and I get that too. It's gonna take.
But you have to stop the money from the large companies that are paying to get their foods into the bag. Because once you hook the kid on that granola, they'll be eating it forever. So you got to put the fruits and vegetables in, and it's get hungry.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I worked for quite a few presidents during my 33 years. But I will say that I did work at the White House under both Bush and Obama. One of my opponents publicly states how he got fired in a new administration. And I could only point that out because that just proves that I'm all for good government and common sense policies. And I didn't get fired. I was actually, allowed to continue making policies for Americans, and I think that's the case in point of how I can work with both parties to get things done.
Should be like that. But
Yes.
Good question.
yes.
Would you vote yes as a big say that?
Yes, I will. Yes, I will. I think so. Again, since I'm all about accountability and transparency, the SAVE Act is exactly that. And so absolutely I will support that because that's accountability and transparency.
Yeah.
Will you work to keep border secure and make innovation no?
All for border security, as I mentioned. What I'd like to focus on are the inefficiencies in the immigration process, the legal immigration process. I think it, like many other processes, there's bureaucracy, it's inefficient. Let's streamline that process so we don't have these illegal immigration issues to deal with. But, however, I do appreciate exactly how President Trump is dealing with the illegal immigration right now. But let's streamline it. And I actually have people that I've talked to across the Commonwealth, that citizens, they're not happy with the illegal immigration either. And they are already sharing with me ways to streamline that legal immigration process, things that challenges they ran into that we can fix and make America great again without illegal, with no illegal.
Yes, I'm a big citizen. But born in Canada, I know what it is, the process, It's with knowing the Constitution. And you had to have two sponsors. You had to have a good reputation. And you know that, so let's see that in anyhow.
Just as a different frame of reference, my sister, American, moved overseas and she worked for a bank overseas. And she was there for so long. She's like, let me go and get my dual citizenship in the Netherlands. And before she could get her citizenship, they actually had her take a little test. She had to be able to speak Dutch before they would give dual citizenship. And I thought that is a great idea because this is America, and I'm sure that it truly is wonderful. That's so true.
Budget.
I love that question. That's what I did throughout my career. I helped put together the Department of Defense budget, and more importantly was defending the president's budget. What I did was I went through the line items of the budget, and there was one, just as an example, one component within defense, now war, that just didn't look right to me. I'm a systems programmer, so I used to write for the DoD systems. And when I'm looking at this, I said, hold up, you're not justifying why you need all this money. So I actually was very scrupulous of every line item in the budget, not only the president's budget, but also when I was the CFO, I actually did not allow my budget requests that I used to get were usually over. Let me dig there. Just the operational budget, the investment budget, were double what I would actually allow, because I would question every line item, wanted to know what month they were going to actually execute and obligate those funds, because I wanted to track it throughout the year. And I got the budget down typically around 50% less than the budget requested by all the programs, because if they could not justify why it was good for the taxpayers, if it didn't support the program, no, it's not in the budget, because we're here to protect the taxpayers, and every budget line item and every sure that even if they did say, they needed a $2 million for a RAN load tester, a telecommunications piece of equipment, I'd say, well, I know that DoD is actually has one that they're not using anymore, so why don't we get that one from them? And that's how I operated. I actually looked outside my program, my $100 billion program, to find money. And we actually were able to get that used RAN load tester from someone else, from another agency. And I just right there saved you over like 50% of that money.
On your way back to Fairfax, could you stop in Richmond and tell them how to get their budget done?
Without, just transparency, justification. And the other thing I used to do is I was actually really good at DoD. We really needed something at FirstNet, the FirstNet Authority. And so I knew from my experiences that I needed $375,000 to get something for our program, and also as a technology piece. And I said, you know what? Don't worry, I'm going to get you that $375,000. So I called over to the chief financial officer and said, hey, I know you're going to have reimbursable money coming back because you're going to clean up your books and you're going to do it at the last minute. So let me have the $375,000 of what you find, and let me buy it so that we put it into our technology. So the DoD, the first responders within DoD will also be able to use this technology. Sure enough, 2 days before September 28th, I got my $375,000, and we were able to buy that piece of equipment using that money in that fiscal year. So we were able to implement new technologies faster, so that is how I work with the budgets. And I know how every department's budget works and how they operate, because I've seen it throughout my career. And that's expertise that I don't think, definitely not my opponents in the primary, but I don't think anybody in Congress right now even has that expertise. And that's why I'm going to be so valuable in making sure that every dollar of your taxpayer dollars is used wisely.
Okay. This is the path. We're patriotic and conservative. We're going to be spending some time in Southwest Virginia with you and the primary.
I have been to Southwest Virginia 15 times already since I announced my campaign. So I love Southwest. I actually just came from further southwest. I was in Jonesville, Pennington, and Wise County, Wise Norton. That's how much I really do appreciate Southwest. And you'll be happy to know that I'm already working. You know, I'm already, praying that I do become your next U.S. Senator. I'm already working with a real estate agent in Wise County to set up my first office once I'm elected to U.S. Senate in Wise or Norton City. So yes, I will definitely be now in the Southwest. You know, I'm here too. Okay. Well, after being here today and talking to you,
What is your opinion on vape centers in farmland areas?
I have a very unique frame of reference on this question. And that is because I have been not only working in the ranks as a civilian in DOD, but also seeing what is happening with our national security while being the chief financial officer for the First Responder Network Authority, an executive leadership certificate in artificial intelligence. So I've been formally trained by Microsoft, Google, and the Ford Foundation on AI. I understand how important data centers are to our national security. But at the same time, I understand the eyesores that these data centers are in Virginia. And so my approach is we need a balance for national security reasons, but also for livability. And so my recommendation is, and I'm talking through this with not only the residents of Virginia, but also I'm even talking to the data center companies. Let's build these data centers underground in caves, for example, where they're naturally cooler and we don't need to use as much energy as the data centers are pulling from our residents. Let's use micronuclear reactors to create that energy for the data centers. We've been using micronuclear reactors on our Navy subs on ships since 1971. Why can't we use them to provide the energy for the data centers that are necessary? And let's get rid of the eyesores that residents are seeing. And I will require that any data centers that do go up, that those costs not be passed on to you, because that is just not fair. And with regard to the water, if we store them and put them in caves, not only are they more secure because there's only one way in and one way out typically, so they're more secure, but we've got that natural cooling and the water that we can recycle to keep the data centers going. So it won't affect you because you won't see them. You won't hear the humming that is occurring with them that people are complaining about. We don't have to worry about, okay, so the data centers are putting trees, to try and hide the monstrosities. Well, did anybody put in the contract who replaces the trees when they fall over because the junipers are so short-rooted that they're just going to fall over in a windstorm? No. But we won't have to worry about that if we build them underground. So that's my approach to data centers. From a national security perspective, we are so much more secure because right now we are behind in AI and utilization of AI in our national security. But at the same time, that's my approach to fixing the data center issues that are so important to the Virginia residents, especially in Loudoun County, where you're seeing.
To piggyback on that question, because I think solar farms were in there too. This is where I think a lot of folks in Southwest Virginia feel unheard about solar farms because Bamberger goes back into the green new energy. And solar farms, we are still, I think, 90% agricultural. Is that right, Mike? A solar farm will burn the land for generations. So that individual will make a lot of money on a federal contract, but the community's devastated, and that affects our schools, our hospitals. There's a ripple effect. Can you respond to that? Because there's a big difference between rural and urban on this issue.
Right.
Did I miss something? I'm not a farmer. I just know some.
Similar to the data centers that are taking up the farmland, which working for the Department of Agriculture, I learned to appreciate truly. I'd go out to the farmlands and talk to the farmers, and I even heard their issues and concerns when I wasn't running for elected office, because it was important to me to understand how to support them while working for the Department of Agriculture. Same thing with not only the data centers, but the solar farms. One other thing on the data centers, the micronuclear reactors, I found out that they're actually testing, doing research and development on, so I'm really following that study to see what comes of that. But back to the solar, so the other thing I used to do was vote for the federal government is for Department of Defense. I focus on environment, and I was writing the affirmative action plan for the largest liability on the federal government's financial report. And it was because of all these chemicals that were getting into the soil, sort of like the solar farms, taking up the farmers' land, your farms, which I'm all for agribusiness, and that goes against agribusiness. But it also causes environmental liabilities that can last in perpetuity, up to, even more than 72 years is what I was tracking. And so we cannot have, my opinion, I will not support solar farms or wind farms because it's hurting again, the backbone of Virginians and the small businesses and the agribusinesses. And wind and solar are not as efficient, and they actually cost us more money. So I'm against those. If we do need to do solar, why not put them on top of parking garages or something where
Every building we have, slap them on us.
I'm going to bring you up to date on solar.
Okay.
Okay.
First thing is solar is funded by your tax dollars. I came out of Massachusetts. Everyone can get a solar on their house. Every time you pay your electric bill, there's $20 in your bill to pay for her to have solar on her house. Solar is totally supported by the government because they go ahead and produce a solar panel. Then you get a tax break. There's no tax break that isn't paid by somebody else. That's just true. Solar is fine if you want to do it and live off grid, but that's your business, not mine. I shouldn't have to pay for it, nor anybody else.
And that's
I was an electrical contractor. I made money putting them up. We knew it's like EV cars. There's not enough grid power to go down the highway and say, oh, let's put up some charging stations. When they built that thing in the middle of no place, they said they need 1,000 amps. You bring in 10 Tesla charges, you need another 10,000 amps. You have to look at what she's saying, the micronuclear, the fission they're looking at, actually water, hydro is actually more pollutant than a gas-fired generation station because of the cement, the constructions. It's a more complicated question than just saying a solar farm.
And you're right, the subsidies. That's why.
The only reason they
Democrats
can be in
want-
business, you would have bought one already.
Yeah, that's exactly why they want it. And that's where we're going to say more taxpayer dollars is by cutting out those subsidies for those less efficient energy.
And if you don't want data centers, don't get on your cell phones anymore because that's where the stuff goes to get in the cloud. It's not in the cloud in the sky. It's in the data.
Farington. The windmill. Unless you've ever seen one of, you don't realize just how huge they are. And we used to live where they were big on the windmill things that conservationists, environmentalists, people, wind energy. What they weren't telling you that was for each